Of the day with Belle Lupton. Hi there once again.
Hello.
Now, we've been talking about our top story this hour, Turkey, the election results over there. Tell us how a Turkish newspaper's reacting.
Well, I think the reaction can be characterised in one word, which is comeback. So President Erdogan's Justice and Development Party, the AKP, won by a landslide in Sunday's election, regaining the majority in parliament that it had lost in June elections. Now, the AKP party won almost half the votes, which returned it to single-party rule in Turkey. But opposition parties have cried foul play. They say that the elections were conducted in unfair conditions. So in Hurriyet, a Turkish paper, there's an editorial that elaborates a little bit on that theme, listing how the Turkish media suffered physically violent attacks by pro-government figures, how newspapers were seized by state institutions just days before the elections, and how almost all the broadcasters were only serving the ruling party, and also how state means were used by the government in electioneering, which obviously is not normally allowed. But this article doesn't put the AKP's success down to election malpractice alone. Serkan Demirtas, who is the editorial writer here, also explains how the Turkish people had, in his words, become annoyed with growing instability in recent months, prompting them towards a change to vote for the AKP, who offered more stability. Now, that, of course, in the wake of two major terrorist attacks within the last 5 months, so since that last election in June, one in Suruk in July and one in Ankara in October. The same writer says that the political vacuum that was created during the last 5 months from Erdogan not having a ruling majority brought back bad memories of the 1990s when Turkey was ruled by two unsuccessful coalition governments.
OK, security concerns really have been at the forefront of many voters' minds. But what about other domestic concerns?
Yes, so according to Emre Deliveli, we're staying in Hurriyet here, so still another Turkish writer. It's down to, all of this is down essentially to some clever media spin, the successes on the AKP's economic record. So Deliveli points to the fact that the rise in wages and employment in Turkey has actually been less than GDP growth, and an improvement in inequality and in poverty has now come to a halt. So he asks, how on earth has the AKP's economic management been perceived to be so successful as it has? Well, he says, consumption has boomed thanks to low interest loans, but the spending growth financed by cheap foreign money is about to come to a halt, he says, and many will be painfully aware suddenly of their debts that need to be repaid. So how long this AKP honeymoon will last is another question.
OK, those are the opinions coming out in Turkish media today. What about here in France?
Well, unsurprisingly, there's been quite a lot of chat about the authoritarian nature of Erdogan's rule. So Libération, French paper, focuses on the intimidation of journalists. Now, they interview the director of a centre-right paper, Turkish paper, Cumhuriyet. Now, this director was directly threatened by Erdogan, who said on a broadcast that he would pay, that he will pay for this. This is quoting Erdogan. I'll chase him until the end. Now, this is over an investigative article that Cumhuriyet had published about an arms delivery by Turkey's secret service to jihadist groups in Syria. Now, L'Opinion, another French paper, a pro-business paper this time, looks at the way that Erdogan has taken advantage of the migrant crisis to redefine his relationship with Europe. So Turkey obviously is the crossing point for many of the migrants into Europe, and EU leaders have been divided over how to deal with the problem. Erdogan has used this as an opportunity to reopen negotiations on EU membership and also on visa relaxation into the Schengen zone. So both issues, which the paper, that L'Opinion, says Erdogan doesn't really care about, but they've allowed him to campaign on those issues. Europe has promised to Erdogan a €3 billion to deal with the flow of Syrian migrants. So that obviously was seen as a success.
OK, let's move on to another of our top stories here on Live in Paris this morning. That plane crash over the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. You've got some articles from the Russian media.
Yes, so Kommersant, a Russian paper owned by one of Putin's, one of the close people to Putin, an oligarch, says that, you know, this subject is for sure dominating the Russian press. You can see it. It's all over the front page of Kommersant. But it's not been spoken about by the Russian president. He hasn't yet commented on this plane crash in which more than 200 passengers and crew are thought to have died. What we do know, and Kommersant goes through the facts, is that the plane broke up in midair above the Sinai Peninsula, which is where it then fell and crashed. Most passengers were holidaymakers who had been in Sharm el-Sheikh, and they were from St. Petersburg. Now, Russia's asked for an investigation as suspicions have surfaced over the safety record of the Russian airline Metrojet that was running the Airbus A321. Now, the Daily Beast, Clive Irving, an aviation expert in the Daily Beast, puts forward a case that the Russian company operating the plane had failed to fix a tail strike, he calls it, that happened 14 years ago when that exact same plane landed badly at Cairo airport. That is, he says, what could have caused it to break apart this weekend. The evidence, he says, is so far consistent with a severe and very sudden structural failure. The remains of the tail of the Airbus were found almost 5 kilometres from the rest of the wreckage. So this does suggest that it broke apart in the air due to that tail and then fell down after that.
Of course, still waiting to find out the conclusions from the black box flight recorders. Thanks very much for bringing us those articles for now. Belle Lupton, looking through the international press for us.